Have you ever wondered why some people seem to move through life untouched by the storms that destroy others? They face the same betrayals, the same losses, the same cruelties that break hearts and shatter spirits, yet they remain unshaken. Their eyes hold peace where others carry anger. Their words flow with wisdom where others speak only from wounds. What do they know that you do not? What have they discovered that allows them to stand firm when the world seeks to bend them? Perhaps you have spent years believing that strength comes from building walls around your heart, from hardening yourself against the world's sharp edges. Maybe you think that to avoid being hurt, you must become like stone, cold, distant, unreachable. But what if I told you that true invulnerability comes not from closing yourself off, but from opening yourself so completely to virtue that nothing impure can find a place to take root within you? Confucius understood this ancient secret. He saw that those who suffer most deeply are not the ones who feel too much, but the ones who have lost their way from the path of righteousness. They react to every slight because their hearts lack the anchor of moral certainty. They crumble under criticism because they have not built their foundation upon the bedrock of virtue. They are tossed about by the opinions and actions of others because they have never learned to govern themselves according to the eternal principles that bring order to chaos. Today, you will discover why nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever affect you again once you understand the true nature of inner cultivation. This is not about becoming indifferent or emotionally dead. This is about becoming so aligned with what is right, so grounded in virtue, that the storms of life cannot move you from your center. When your heart is governed by benevolence, when your actions flow from righteousness, when your words spring from wisdom, then you become like the mountain that watches calmly as clouds gather and disperse around its peak. The Master taught that a person of virtue is like water that has found its proper course. It flows naturally, effortlessly, always seeking the right path. It does not struggle against the rocks in its way. It simply flows around them, wearing them smooth over time. This is the power you will discover within yourself. Not the brittle strength that breaks under pressure, but the flexible strength that bends without breaking, that yields without being defeated. If you have made it this far, it is because something within you recognizes this truth. You are tired of being controlled by circumstances beyond your power. You are weary of reacting to every provocation, every disappointment, every harsh word. You long for the peace that comes not from having a perfect life, but from having a perfect response to whatever life brings. And that perfect response is always the same. It is the response that flows from virtue, that honors the way, that maintains harmony even in the midst of discord. Let us begin this journey together. But know this, what you are about to learn will change not just how you respond to the world, but how you see yourself, your duties, and your place in the great order of things. Most people believe that their suffering comes from outside themselves. They point to the harsh words of others, to the injustices they have endured, to the failures and disappointments that have marked their path through life. They say, if only others would treat me better, if only circumstances were different, then I would know peace. But this belief is the very root of their torment, for it places their happiness in the hands of forces they cannot control. Confucius saw this delusion clearly. He understood that a person who seeks to change the world before changing themselves is like a farmer who tries to harvest before he has planted, who expects fruit from a tree whose roots he has never watered. The Master taught that all transformation begins within, that the person who would govern a kingdom must first learn to govern their own heart, their own thoughts, their own impulses toward vice or virtue. When you are hurt by another's words, where does that hurt truly originate? Does it come from the sounds that left their mouth, or does it come from something already present within you that those sounds awakened? A person whose heart is filled with righteousness cannot be diminished by accusations of wrongdoing, for they know their own conduct and find it aligned with virtue. A person whose actions spring from benevolence cannot be shaken by claims of selfishness, for they have examined their motives and found them pure. The truth that few are willing to face is this: you suffer not because of what others do to you, but because of what you have not yet cultivated within yourself. Each wound that cuts deeply reveals a place where virtue has not yet taken root. Each criticism that stings shows you where pride has grown stronger than humility. Each betrayal that devastates exposes where you have placed your trust in human fickleness rather than in the unchanging principles of right conduct. This is not a harsh teaching meant to blame you for your pain. It is a liberating teaching that shows you where true power lies. If your suffering came entirely from outside forces, you would be helpless, a leaf blown about by every wind, with no say in your own destiny. But if your suffering comes from within, from the disorder in your own heart, then you have the power to end it. You can cultivate virtue where vice once grew. You can plant humility where pride once flourished. You can nurture wisdom where ignorance once ruled. The gentleman, as Confucius called the person of virtue, does not seek to control what happens to him. He seeks only to control his response to what happens. He understands that life will bring storms. This is the nature of existence. But he also understands that storms cannot touch what is truly important unless he allows them to. His peace does not depend on fair treatment. His joy does not require others' approval. His sense of worth is not diminished by others' opinions. Why? Because all of these things flow from within. From the well of virtue, he has spent his life digging deeper. When someone speaks harshly to such a person, he does not immediately react with anger or hurt. Instead, he pauses and asks himself, is there truth in these words that I should heed? Is there a lesson here that heaven is trying to teach me? If there is truth, he receives it gratefully, as a gift that will help him grow in virtue. If there is no truth, he simply lets the words pass by like wind through the trees, noted but not absorbed, heard but not internalized. This is the first great secret of becoming unaffected by the world. You must understand that everything that happens to you is either a teacher or a test. The harsh master who criticizes your work is teaching you patience and humility. The friend who betrays your trust is testing whether your virtue depends on others' virtue or stands firm on its own foundation. The loss that breaks your heart is showing you where you have become too attached to what is temporary and not attached enough to what is eternal. But recognizing this truth intellectually is only the beginning. The real work lies in the daily cultivation of your character, in the patient practice of virtue, even when, especially when, it brings no immediate reward. This cultivation requires something that our hurried world has forgotten: the willingness to look honestly at yourself, to see your faults without excuse, and to commit yourself to the slow, steady work of moral improvement. In the quiet moments of dawn, when the world still sleeps and your heart has not yet been stirred by the day's demands, you can feel it, that deep longing for a life of true substance. You sense that there is a way of living that rises above the petty disputes and endless reactions that consume so many around you. You glimpse, perhaps only briefly, what it might mean to walk through life with the steady confidence of one who knows their place in the great order of things. This longing is not mere wishful thinking. It is the voice of your true nature, calling you back to the path your ancestors walked, the path that leads not away from the world's challenges, but through them, with dignity intact. The cultivation of character that Confucius taught is not the work of a season or a year. It is the work of a lifetime, as patient and persistent as the farmer who tends his fields through drought and flood alike, knowing that virtue, like grain, must be planted, tended, and harvested with unwavering dedication. Consider how a tree grows. It does not force its branches upward by willing them to stretch toward the sky. Instead, it sends its roots deeper into the earth, drawing nourishment from sources hidden beneath the surface. The deeper the roots, the higher the tree can safely grow, the stronger it becomes against the winds that would topple it. Your character is like those roots, invisible to casual observers, yet the true source of your ability to stand firm when others are blown about by every shifting breeze of opinion and circumstance. The gentleman understands that his greatest enemy is not the harsh critic or the unfaithful friend, but the disorder within his own heart. When anger rises, he does not immediately blame the one who provoked it. Instead, he asks himself why his peace was so easily disturbed. When envy stirs at another's good fortune, he does not curse fate for its unfairness. Instead, he examines what lacking in his own contentment allowed such poison to take root. When fear grips him at the prospect of loss, he does not rail against uncertainty. Instead, he considers whether he has been clinging too tightly to what was never truly his to keep. This inward turning is not the navel-gazing of the idle or the self-obsession of the weak. It is the most practical wisdom imaginable, for it places the power of transformation exactly where it belongs, in your own hands. The farmer cannot control the weather, but he can choose which seeds to plant. The student cannot control his teacher's mood, but he can choose whether to approach each lesson with humility or pride. The son cannot control his father's temperament, but he can choose whether to honor his duties with joy or resentment. Every moment presents you with this choice. Will you react from the untrained impulses of your lower nature, or will you respond from the cultivated wisdom of your higher self? The untrained heart seeks immediate satisfaction, quick revenge, easy pleasure. It wants to strike back when struck, to speak harshly when spoken to harshly, to abandon virtue the moment virtue becomes inconvenient. But the cultivated heart has learned a different rhythm, one that flows in harmony with the deeper currents of righteousness that govern all things. When someone speaks to you with disrespect, the cultivated heart does not immediately seek to defend your honor through harsh words in return. Instead, it pauses and considers, what would a person of true virtue do in this moment? Perhaps the answer is to speak gently, understanding that harshness often springs from hidden pain. Perhaps it is to remain silent, knowing that not every provocation requires a response. Perhaps it is to examine your own conduct, wondering if something in your behavior invited such treatment. This is not weakness, it is the highest form of strength. The person who must always defend themselves reveals that they are not truly secure in their virtue. The person who must always have the last word shows that they have not learned the power of restraint. The person who cannot bear criticism demonstrates that they have built their sense of worth on the shifting sands of others' opinions rather than on the solid rock of right conduct. But how does one develop such restraint? How does one cultivate the kind of character that remains unshaken when the world seeks to provoke and disturb? The answer lies not in grand gestures or dramatic transformations, but in the patient practice of small virtues in ordinary moments. It lies in choosing kindness when irritation would be easier, in speaking truthfully when deception would be more convenient, in fulfilling your duties when neglect would go unnoticed, Each small choice in the direction of virtue strengthens the foundation upon which your character stands. Each moment of choosing principle over impulse builds the inner fortress that no external force can breach. The merchant who refuses to cheat even when he could profit greatly learns that his integrity is worth more than gold. The student who continues studying even when the material is difficult discovers that perseverance builds a strength that extends far beyond academic achievement. The daughter who tends her aging parents with patience even when they are demanding finds that filial devotion cultivates a depth of love that enriches her entire being. These may seem like small matters, but they are the very substance from which an unshakable character is forged. Just as a great wall is built one stone at a time, so is virtue built one choice at a time, one moment of right action at a time, one instance of choosing the higher path over the lower one. And here is what you will discover as you walk this path. The world has not changed, but your relationship to it has been completely transformed. The same harsh words that once wounded you now pass by like rain off a roof. The same disappointments that once devastated you become merely opportunities to practice acceptance and find new ways forward. The same betrayals that once filled you with rage now serve as reminders of why virtue must never depend on others' virtue for its existence. You become like the mountain that stands unchanged while seasons pass around it, not through hardness, but through perfect alignment with the natural order. The mountain does not resist the wind. It simply remains rooted so deeply in the earth that no external force can move it from its foundation. This is what happens when virtue becomes your true nature rather than something you wear like borrowed clothes. The transformation is subtle at first. You notice that the colleague who once irritated you with their boastful words no longer stirs anger in your heart. Not because you have grown cold or indifferent, but because their words now reveal more about their own lack of contentment than they could ever reveal about you. When someone speaks from emptiness, seeking to fill their void by diminishing others, the person of virtue sees this clearly and responds with compassion rather than defensiveness. This clarity comes not from studying others, but from studying yourself with the honesty of one who truly wishes to improve. The master taught that the gentleman examines himself each day on 3 points. In planning for others, have I been faithful? In friendship, have I been trustworthy? Have I practiced what I have taught? This daily examination is like the gardener who tends his plot each morning, removing weeds before they can take root, watering what is good before it withers from neglect. But you must understand, this self-examination is not the anxious worry of one who fears making mistakes. It is the calm assessment of one who knows that virtue, like skill in any craft, improves through patient practice and honest evaluation. The archer who wishes to hit the center of the target does not berate himself when his arrow goes wide. Instead, he adjusts his stance, corrects his aim, and draws the bow again with steady purpose. When you live this way, something remarkable occurs. The very people who once seemed bent on disturbing your peace begin to change in your presence. Not because you have forced them to change, but because virtue has its own magnetic power. The water that flows purely from the mountain spring gradually purifies whatever it touches. The light that shines steadily in darkness naturally draws others toward its warmth. And so you see, the path to becoming untouchable by the world's storms lies not in hardening your heart, but in cultivating virtue so deeply that nothing impure can find purchase within you. When righteousness becomes your foundation, when benevolence guides your actions, when wisdom tempers your responses, then you discover the profound peace that comes from perfect alignment with the way. Begin today with one small choice toward virtue, and watch as the world's power to disturb you gradually dissolves like morning mist before the rising sun.